So Gordon is going to be talking about navigating growth barriers. So Gordon is co-founder of Impact Central, an accelerator that works with impact startups and has advised more than 40 impact startups. Gordon is a thought leader on impact investing and has created numerous corporate structures that have delivered impressive impact and financial returns. He began his career as an aerospace engineer and served on NASA Advisory Council for 9 years. So without further ado, I want to give you the floor, and we're really looking forward to your talk.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sonia. I'm really excited to be here tonight. Thank you for that. I am going to share my screen. I think I've lost the chat, but if there's a problem with the screen, Tom, you can let me know, but hopefully otherwise the screen sharing is working. So as Sonia said, my name is Gordon Eichorst. I'm one of the co-founders of Impact Central, and working with startups is actually something I've been doing for a long time now. Back in the early 2000 timeframe, I ran technology investment banking for Morgan Stanley here in Europe. And so I've been working with startups for many years, all kinds of different startups, and really excited now to be working with, since 2018, to be working with purpose-driven startups. So startups that are still for-profit businesses, but also they have a social or an environmental mission. And as you can imagine, working with startups, the topic of growth and how am I going to, deal with the million things that I want to do in order to make my business bigger, yet I'm always, kind of resource constrained. How am I going to go about doing that? We at Impact Central, we do spend a lot of time talking about growth barriers. And that is something that I wanted to share with everybody tonight. So hopefully everybody can see my slides. The first might seem like a silly question, but I wanted to ask the question, why growth? Why do we seek growth? And it seems, kind of obvious. I think from a Christian perspective, we would say, it's certainly all over the Bible about our purpose is to seek growth and that things grow. And we can look at the Garden of Eden from, beginning of Genesis and talk about how things grow. Certainly so many of the parables that Jesus talked about had to do with growth, and including when he talked about the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, yet grows into a tree large enough for birds to perch on. So obviously growth is one of these messages that we hear a lot of, and is something that we're always seem to be striving for. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was that weeds grow too. And in particular, I wanted to highlight the parable that Jesus talks about, the parable of the weeds, where he said that although God, in the parable, if you remember it, basically God plants good seeds, but the evil one plants bad seeds. And then God allows both seeds to grow but not forever. At some point in time, he's going to take out the bad seeds, but until that time, the bad seeds are growing along. So the reason I just wanted to talk about that is just when we're thinking about growth, there's probably a first step, and that's not tonight's talk, but I just felt I would be remiss if I didn't highlight that there's a certain amount of discernment that we want to do before we move forward. So hopefully the kind of the thing that we're pushing forward, where we feel that there is a growth barrier in the way, we feel we have a certain amount of discernment that is the direction we should be going. And I'm going to start from that perspective, that we've defined that the growth we're looking for is something that is going to do good things, and we feel very positively about it. Now, I'm actually going to use the word vision here, because I think it's in a way it's perhaps an all-encompassing word, and some people are thinking, oh, well, a vision is kind of a 3D model of the city that I'm supposed to build, complete with all the little bits and pieces that I have to figure out. But I actually want to put forward that what I'm talking about is really that we often get what I'll just say is a roadmap. It's not even necessarily that a lot of definition in the roadmap, but more of a destination, some place that God has identified for us that we want to be driving towards, that I think a word that I like particularly is that it brings us into a spacious place, a better place where a lot of the problems that we're dealing with now seem to go away, and there's just more love, and just things are working better. So oftentimes, and I think many of us that are working on things, we feel we have a certain vision. We've been given a sense of calling that this is the direction we should be going in, and vision is really important for. And I just put down 3 particular reasons, but one of them is that it gives us hope, and hope is critically important because when we're dealing with the challenging situations that we're dealing with now. And as I mentioned, we work with social and environmental startups that are dealing with a lot of the problems that we're facing in the world. It's important that we have hope that we can fix some of these problems. The second part about a vision, though, is it also gives us an idea of how things might be. And that's important as we think about what are the things we want to get rid of versus what are some of the things that, they just need to be improved a little bit. So having a better idea of the destination can help us to identify how we want to do that. And the last is courage. And we need courage because it's always going to be challenging. Change is difficult. And so we need to have the ability to look at the future, at least to the extent to believe that and understand that it's going to be better, and that will give us the courage to take that new step and that first step and move forward. So this is all great. We can say thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving me this vision, or giving me an idea of what things could be like, and inspiring me to do that. The future looks really exciting. I can't wait to get there. But I also find that, unfortunately, there's one thing that often is not provided, and that is a sense of timing. And this sense of timing is very much a human issue. That how we sense time versus kind of eternity is a pretty tough concept to get our heads around. And ultimately, I think that's in many ways where these growth barriers crop up. In other words, we have a vision, we know where we want to be getting towards, and we're kind of saying, well, I need to get there, and I want to get there now. I want to do it right away, and this thing's blocking me. This thing, whatever it is, whether it's individuals or some other obstacle that's in my way, is blocking me. And I'll call us, we're now people. We want it now, or better, even yesterday. If it happened, last week, God, please, take care of this problem for me last week, so that I don't have to deal with it, and I can move on to this vision that you've given me. And so there's given that we're impatient people, what are some of the approaches that we might take? And there's some good news here. I'll say it's a little bit mixed, because we'll talk about that a little bit further. But ultimately, the good news is that there's a lot of different ways that people have looked at these kind of barriers that come in front of us when we're trying to achieve our goal or our vision. And the first thing is, the first bullet point is that, well, don't talk about the barrier. Don't focus on the barrier. Focus on the objective. So let's forget about this barrier thing, and we're just going to plow through it and get past it, and get to the spacious place we want to get to. Second point is that there's lots of books and experts that come up with all kinds of different acronyms and things that we can then use to achieve our objectives and break them down. And as I mentioned, we work with startups, and I've seen kind of a lot of different ways that people have addressed their growth barriers, but there's 3 in particular that I wanted to highlight that a lot of, or in my opinion, most startup founders kind of try to do. So the first of those I'm going to call the frontal assault. So the frontal assault is when you're in the case of a startup, is that they realize, okay, to get to where we got to get to, we got this barrier. We're going to get all of our resources together, and we're going to attack this problem. We're going to take the hill, and we're going to go for it. And if we don't make it the first time, it's okay. We'll go back down the hill. We'll regroup, and then we'll take it the second time. And eventually we'll get there. And so the slogan for this is that failure is not an option. We're going to achieve it eventually. So we're going to make that frontal assault. And what does success look like? Well, success is that we're standing on the top of the hill, surveying the land that we've conquered around us, and either that's the objective or we're able to move on to the next objective after conquering the hill. So that's kind of the first way that people push through barriers. The second one I'll call sleight of hand. And sleight of hand, also very common in the startup space. And in this case, it's an approach that people use when they don't have the brute strength or a lot of resources necessarily, and instead they're going to rely on their cleverness. And so they're going to say, we'll use our cleverness to confuse either the obstacle or the people that are blocking us from getting where we want to go. And the way this one kind of turns out is that people survey the scene, they look at kind of what's in front of them, they then kind of tell a new story, they embellish truth, they change things a little bit, they kind of talk a little bit, talk up maybe some things that they don't really have, and make some claims that hopefully people don't ask them too many questions about. And ultimately, the slogan is "Fake it till you make it." So in the startup space, if you're familiar with that, it's a slogan that does make its way around. And ultimately, success is people laughing at the fools that they've been able to fool, and they can gloat over the victory. Now, the poster child, most recently, of the sleight of hand approach would be Elizabeth Holmes, if you follow Theranos, which was a medical startup, which basically got pretty far without actually having a product that worked. So ultimately, it's doing this is people relying on the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of people don't check their facts, but eventually they do. So it's often a temporary solution. And then the third one that I'll talk about is seeking advantage. So this one I see when startup founders are kind of the people that are very analytical. So they believe that there's always a solution. And they just need to get the knowledge, the information together, and then they're going to come up with the optimal solution. And once they have that optimal solution, then they'll have the advantage. So the way that this one goes is people kind of analyze their opponent, they determine strengths and weaknesses, what is their unique advantage that they can then work on, and then once they figure that out, then they kind of go for the jugular and try to take down their opponent. And ultimately, so the slogan for this one is there can be only one. So they see themselves, there's only going to be one winner, everybody else is a loser. It might seem extreme to say success is world domination, but I've just found that people taking the seeking advantage approach just don't stop. They kind of keep trying to seek more advantage. So if it worked once, then there's going to be the next opponent that I have to go on. And so that approach ends up, saying if a small victory is good, then another victory, a larger victory, is better. And so now, why do people choose these three methods? And I've thought about this a lot because in some way they're kind of scorched earth methods to getting past your barrier. And I think the reason they do, and this is a definition out of the dictionary, is basically that a barrier is an obstacle that prevents movement or access. And so with that in mind, and what do those three methods do? Well, if you want to get on with a situation, then you're going to do something that is going to destroy or circumvent the barrier. And those three methods, whether it be frontal assault, sleight of hand, or seizing an advantage, do that. They basically just get rid of the barrier. Now, why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because you're kind of saying that the barrier has nothing to teach you. And this is a really important point, because if you think about once again from more of a biblical perspective, what are we supposed to do with our time here? There's certainly elements of learning, elements of spending effort and resources to make things better. And what that means is we need to be learning, we need to be understanding what the problems are, and we need to look at things in a way that barriers are not necessarily things that need to be destroyed or circumvented, but they need to be, and they're not just annoying things to get rid of, but they're rather things that we want to understand better. And so what I've put down here, and I've put this down as a Christian definition of the word barrier, but it's actually a standard definition of a barrier out of the dictionary also, and that is that a barrier is a circumstance or object that keeps people apart or prevents communication. And so now the reason I call it a Christian definition of a barrier is because if you think about this definition versus the last definition, it actually is a completely different perspective, right? So here we're talking about keeping people apart or preventing communication. And communication happens between people. So whereas the first definition is very much about me and my barrier, and that is why I think about methods that achieve my objectives. What about if we think in terms of a barrier, not as me, but us? It's our barrier. How are we going to get past this barrier? Because the likelihood is if I'm having a problem with it, then it's probably a problem that other people are having a problem with, or that it's even a societal problem that we are being tasked to try to provide a solution for. So in the second definition, what would be the way that we would solve this type of a barrier? And the answer to that is that we would build community. And once again, why does this become a Christian definition? Because that really harkens back to, if you think about the first two commandments, which is to love God and to love your neighbor. So, how are we keeping, what are the things that are keeping us apart? And those are really the barriers that we need to get past. And ultimately, for whether it's for businesses or all kinds of reasons, the opportunities that we have by working together to remove these barriers is much greater than just treating them as our individual problems. So I just want to make a couple points. The first one is just, what are the two types of barriers that I would say we typically come across, and when we say this, we're going to describe the barrier. And the first one is we say, well, it's just too big, I don't even know where to start. This is gigantic. There's no way I could possibly do anything about this barrier. The other types of barriers, and they pretty much do fall in these two categories, is it's just going to take too long. It's you're thinking that I got other things I want to do. This is going to take years of my life, or it's just going to take so many resources, and there must be a faster way to do this because this is just going to take too long. So let's just take a look at these two types of barriers. The first one is if we're saying it's too big, I think from a Christian perspective, we really have to ask, really, is it really too big? Because God looks for things that we think are too big. Nothing's too big, right? If God is for us, what can stand against us? And to remind me of that, I actually have a Post-it note on my wall. I'll just read it out. This is from Craig Rochelle. It says, if what you're trying to accomplish does not require prayer, then your ambition is not big enough. So maybe the question isn't that the barriers that we're looking at are too big, but rather that our ambitions aren't big enough, and that we're not challenging ourselves enough. But I do get it. I understand some barriers will seem really humongous, and you kind of really don't know where to start. And then I would say, well, the second step to do then is to seek more discernment, to go back, understand, what is it really that I'm trying to accomplish, and why is there this barrier in the way? Maybe I need to be thinking a little bit more about the objective that I'm trying to get towards. And is it really a kingdom objective, or is it something that I'm trying to really push too hard on? Now, if you do get to the conclusion that this is a barrier I'm going to have to get past, then two last points here are addressing that. The first one is, have you committed? And this is really important, because ultimately, if we're going to count on faith, if we're going to count on God, we have to show faith. So we need to show faith that we're committed to the solution. And what I found time and time again is that, unfortunately, you have to show that faith that you believe a solution will come to you, and with the demonstration of faith, then the solution comes. But the good news is that that doesn't mean that you have to solve it immediately. You just have to take that first step. And it's that first step that is what's going to demonstrate your faith and your belief and get you further, because it'll just be one step after that. The other one, which is the other objective, is that it will just take too long. And I hear this objective a lot, and I find this one also quite interesting. I've thought about this a lot lately. First of all, I'll say that, God really sees time differently. And although we as Christians talk about our eternal life, we do get caught up in the life that we're living in right now. And it just seems that it's easy to think about time frames in that years or weeks, months, days, years would matter. But that's just not God's perspective. So, we need to think differently about some of these barriers. And to the second point, and what I was saying, I think about this more lately, is we always think, well, why are we in such a hurry? And I say that in the context of, for example, with climate change. So lately, it just seems that the solutions need to be more and more urgent and more dramatic. Yes, the situation is urgent, but it took us 50 years to get into the situation. So what we need to do is take a 50-year approach again to get us out of it. We don't need to solve it in a year. We need to start addressing our problems, but it doesn't have to all be completely solved in a year. So we need to change our perspective on time. Two other points. One is that success is the journey. Life is a journey. The projects that you work on, they're a journey. And it's really important to stay present to that. Not that you're just thinking about the outcome, but rather so much more of our time is actually spent on the journey itself. So how we act on the journey and how we finish in that it's much more important that we are faithful as opposed to successful. And then the last bit is, of course, once we get involved in breaking down barriers, God will act, and he can accelerate and change the timescales quite dramatically, but only if we kind of get involved and start pulling our weight on these. So in summary, if you're going to navigate growth barriers, when you're next faced with a huge growth barrier, something that seems impossible, something that feels really large, or it's just going to take too long, I'd suggest not trying one of the three methods I talked about earlier. So in other words, don't do a frontal assault. They really end up wasting huge amounts of resources. And time and time again, when people try that, they always look back and say, well, that really was kind of a scorched earth approach that didn't really achieve my objective. Similarly, sleight of hand, never a good way to go. It's just going to reduce your integrity. And even though it might be difficult, always important to maintain your integrity in all things. And then the last, seeking advantage. This is just the antithesis of love. So when you're seeking advantage, you're just looking to defeat people. And that also just has no future. So those aren't the approaches to take. What you should do, though, what you should do is you should share. And so I put down three things. So share your vision. Share your vision with as many people as possible. I think oftentimes we feel that our vision is our vision, or that, we don't know if we should be doing it and we're timid. But boldness comes when you share your vision, when you start talking to people about what you feel God has called you to do, and talking to them about maybe joining you. And if they join you, the power of your vision will be so much, your ability to make that happen, and God will just show up in a big way. So sharing your vision with your team, with your people, with people with even with customers, with people that want to support you, want to see you succeed. Second one is to share your burden. So obviously, this goes in two ways. One is to share your burden with your team. Once again, if you get them bought in and they understand what you're trying to accomplish, people want to see meaning in their work, and they will come along. They'll take some of your burden, and you'll be able to go so much further. There's a saying that if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others. So definitely share your burden, but of course also share your burden with Jesus. We need to not believe that we can do really anything on our own. So I just know, on a personal note, it's the trap I always fall into until I'm flat on my face. And then I realize, what was I trying to do? I was trying to do it again by myself. And you're just, without Jesus' help, we just really, it's just too much burden to carry. And the last one is to share your prayers. And with that, the objective, once again, to get past barriers, to see them as problems of communication, problems of getting people involved. The way to get kingdom people involved is through prayer. So work with your church groups, with people that you pray with, and that will just change your view of what actually is a barrier, and you might stop seeing things so much as barriers and see them more as opportunities. And that is the end of what I had to say on growth barriers.
Gordon, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experience with us. That was so rich in so many levels. Thank you so very much. I loved what you said about not being in a hurry. A beautiful thing to hear, but more challenging to do. How do you do that yourself, Gordon? How do you make sure that you're not hurrying through life?
So that's such a great question, Sonia. And it's something that I've actually been working on a lot over the last couple of years. I actually increasingly do contemplative prayer and meditation, where I am just being. So just taking time to realize how amazing the fact that we're alive, that we have this planet, and yes, we can talk about the problems, but it is just such a blessing to us to be here, and to just take time every day, 15 minutes just to sit still and just feel God's presence in that regard. And I find that when I'm doing that consistently, it just helps me realize that all of this hurry is just manufactured in my mind, and that God has given us plenty of time to do what we need to do.
I love that answer. Thank you so much. On a personal level, lockdown for me was a real teaching. It was almost like God slowing us down, wasn't it? And getting the family around the table again. So I've been desperately trying to cling on to that whole slowness. So yeah, that was really important to hear that again. And so many things I picked up. I've been making notes all the way through your talk. What I also wanted to ask you is, I loved what you spoke about vision, the importance of vision. That was so exciting and so refreshing. You said vision gives us hope. It's certainly something that we need to cling on to at this time. What is your vision, Gordon, for the next few years?
So my vision, as you introduced me, I'm working with trying to really change the way that our business community and the way we think about interacting, on a daily basis. And I guess when you think about the word business, I mean, that's what we do, right? We work a lot. We're spending a huge amount of time in companies and startups and doing all kinds of things and interacting with each other, and just changing the way we do that by changing the dialogue for how companies engage with that. It's very challenging to do that with large companies because it's been so ingrained. We have so much corporate finance theory of how things should work, but there's so many exciting startups that we're working with, just amazing people that are just inspired to build companies that actually are doing as much good as, and the profit just allows them to do more good. So, it's changing the dialogue of what community could be like, about business could be like, things about being, for example, local, and then caring about the people within our community. So my vision is that we just continue to see that to grow, so that fewer people start feeling disconnected, and businesses are actually connecting people, bringing them things they do with their time that they enjoy, bringing them goods and services that are valuable to them and that enrich our lives and each other. So that it's a big vision, but I think now is the time. And this was, to your point about time. It's not going to happen. Maybe, maybe not within my lifetime, but it doesn't matter. What we need to do is move in the right direction. And then God's time will be more than adequate to take care of where we need to get to.
Fascinating stuff, Gordon. How can people find you if they want to hear more about you?
Sure. So I guess a few different ways. One way is through Impact Central. So we have a number of different things that we do. If people are interested in just the broader community of working this way with businesses and thinking about helping startups and purpose-driven, so social or environmental differences, impact, et cetera. We have a website at impactcentral.co.uk. We do blogs and podcasts, and we also host occasional webinars where we bring speakers to talk about things, including mental health and how people can do things like that. So just join the community, and we can also get people in touch with some of the startups, and so that they can start helping and working with companies that are very purpose driven.